YouTube. Y'all already know it's your boy, the Latin assassin himself, Big Lou, tipping back in. One more again. What it do with Big Lou, NMZ on 2. Baby, baby. So check it out. You tell from that thumbnail, uh, that's none other than Jose Canseco. Jose, can you see? Right? Jose Canseco. Um, some people call him a legend. Some people call him a at one time the greatest baseball player to play that was playing at that particular time, the greatest power hitter at that time. Um, because you got to keep in mind, him and Barry Bonds came out the same year, '86, but they were totally different, right? Especially the beginning of Bonds' career, he was like 24, 25 home runs. Canseco was hitting out 30 plus. He got Rookie of the Year, '86, '88, first man 40-40. Even though they say Barry Bonds' dad, Bobby Bonds, was really the first 40-40 guy, but it was, I believe the story goes that there was a rain delay, excuse me, and that the game got canceled because of the rain. And I believe he hit his 40th home run in the game, or he got his 40th stolen base, but because they didn't have enough innings played, they ended up canceling it. And so what he ended up getting, the stats that he got that game didn't count. So Canseco, a lot of controversy around Canseco for a book, his behavior on the streets, his behavior as a player, as far as with the media. Some of it is not not all what it was cracked up to be, as far as I'll get into, like, in other words, like, how they say Barry Bonds was an asshole to the media, this and that, and that's part of the reason why they haven't voted him in, because he's never admitted, or he's got busted for PED use, steroid use, right? So Canseco, the way from what I've gathered from him, listening to him talk and all that, that he was a real quiet guy, and he was real quiet, and he came off as standoffish, but it was more so that was his personality. But then the steroid use had something to do with it. You know what I'm saying? Like, in other words, it put him like in somewhat of a depressed mood. You know what I'm saying? So uh, that was up with that. But definitely, we know the book Juiced. He wrote it in like '05 or '06. It really where he said he talks about writing the book, and then he didn't put no names in it. So the company that he was going to write the book through said, "No, this ain't going to work, because they're just going to take it as you're lying anyway. You're not going to say names." So then he added in all these different names, different guys he played with, teammates, different guys that he hooked up with, guys he played with first as in high school, and then later hooked up with in the majors as teammates, and guys that he hooked up with, that he hooked them up with his guy, whoever he was getting his stuff from, things of that nature, right? So let's give a little background about Jose Canseco. Jose Canseco was born on July 2nd, 1964, in Havana, Cuba. To he was born as a twin with his brother Osvaldo, aka Ozzy, right? Canseco bats right, throws right, 6'3", 6'4", 230, 240-pound individual. He made his major league debut for the Oakland Athletics on September 2nd, 1985. And his last appearance was October 6th, October 6th, I believe it was October 6th, 2001, I believe it was, for the White Sox. His batting stats, he's a 266 lifetime hitter. Not bad for a power hitter. He finished with 462 home runs, 1,407 runs batted in. He played with the A's from 1985 to 92, the Rangers from 92 to 94, the Red Sox from 95 through 96, back to the A's in 97, then on to Toronto for 1998, and then he made a stop again, or not again, but a more than just a one season stop with Tampa Bay Devil Rays at the time. Now they're just the Tampa Bay Rays. 1999 and 2000, and then he signed with, and then he played with the Yankees in 2000, and then the White Sox in 2001. So that's a total of seven teams. Career highlights and awards: he's a six-time All-Star: 1986, 1988, 1989, 1990, 1992, and 1999. Um, he's a two-time World Series champion: 1989 with the A's when they defeated the Giants in the Bay Series, and then in 2000 with the Yankees. Uh, he's the AL MVP from 1988. He's the AL Rookie of the Year in 1986, like I mentioned. He's a four-time Silver Slugger Award winner, 88, 90, 91, 98. He's a two-time Major League Baseball home run king, 1988 and 91. And one time he led the league in RBIs in 1988. The first man to go 40-40 legitly in Major League Baseball history in 1988, like I mentioned earlier. He's fourth all time for home runs for any athletic player with 254. Um, he's only one of 14 players in Major League Baseball history with 400 home runs and 200 stolen bases. I mean, you hear 14, you think, oh, that's a lot, but 14 out of he's one of 14 ever to do that. Um, let's see. Back when he was playing in '85 for the Huntsville Stars, he was nicknamed Parkway Jose for the fact that he was hitting the balls way out in the parking lot kind of area. Excuse me. He was nicknamed the Natural, with some analysts saying he was the best prospect since Willie Mays. Oakland A's hitting coach said that Jose was a mixture of Roberto Clemente, Dale Murphy, and Reggie Jackson. And others touted him to be the next Mickey Mantle. Despite many injuries during his latter part of his career, Canseco averaged 40 home runs, 120 RBIs, and 102 runs scored every 162 games. He played 17 seasons with 1,887 games played. But if you look at his totals, I mean, when it comes to the injuries, he missed about a total of 2 complete seasons. So you're talking over 300 games he missed because of injuries. Imagine that. I mean, we'll just say 30 home runs a season, 2 seasons, that's 60 home runs, right? That's 60 home runs alone on the 2 years' work he was injured. That would have put him well over 500 home runs. He was relatively still young when he quit baseball. Um, I think he was 37 years old. Um, let's see. His 462 career home runs are the 12th highest total in AL history and the second most in Major League Baseball history for a player with less than 2,000 games played. And like I said, so he's 1,887 games played. So that's 113 games less than 2,000. And then, like I mentioned, he wrote the book in 2005, Juiced, Wild Times, Rampant Roids, Smash Hits, and Baseball Got Big, right? So he has regrets about writing that book, right? He's got regrets of saying teammates' names such as Mark McGuire, Rafael Palmeiro, Juan Gonzalez, Ivan Rodriguez, Pudge, A Rod. He's talked about it in the book. He regrets doing it, writing the book, for a few different reasons. But one, obviously, he got blackballed from baseball. He could never get signed by another team. He was straight up told that, we can't mess with you, basically, without telling him they can't mess with him, basically. Some probably did make the hint even more clearer. Um, Obviously, he has 462 home runs, so the biggest feature for him, what he was trying to accomplish was hitting 500, right? So he was 38 home runs shy. He was 37 when he stopped playing. I mean, is there any way that he could have played 3 seasons, 4 seasons, and hit even 10 home runs a season? That would have put him at 30 to 40, if 3 to 4 seasons. He could have done that easily, right? He got blackballed. He started saying things Then he wrote the book, right? And it was just clear that he wasn't going to be playing no more. Um, so he regretted telling on the teammates, like I said. He regretted the fact that he wrote the book, period, right? Um, he never he never figured that it was gonna come to the point where, the way it happened. In other words, getting called up to to Capitol Hill up to go sit before Congress. I'm not sure if it was a House of Representative investigation or if it was the Senate investigation. I seen clips of the Congress. I mean, excuse me, of the representatives. I didn't see no clips of the senators. Doesn't mean that they didn't have one. Maybe closed door session and all that. But what he did say was he was surprised that like I said, he didn't want to. He never thought it would have went that way. That here he says what he says about certain individuals and how he did it and what was involved with him doing it, and then all these other major leaguers there. All of a sudden, Sammy can't speak English. He needs a translator. McGuire don't want to talk about certain things. It was you know, according to his lawyers, they advised him to did not not even to speak about anything personally or even put his opinion on anything that had to do with steroids. Okay, and then you got Rafael Pomero who starts out his introduction saying and he points to I've never used steroids, and then a few weeks later or a couple months later he gets busted, right? um so Conseco was saying, and I just heard him say this recently, he thought that it was going to shine some light, you know, and because it wasn't at the time, it wasn't illegal. It wasn't against Major League Baseball policy to use steroids. You know what I'm saying? So he thought what was going to happen was guys were going to, you know, some were going to admit like him, and that they were going to be, partly responsible of baseball being changed as far as being cleaned up, and having an integrity to take accountability for what they did. Right now, steroids shouldn't be, in my opinion. You still got to do the work. You still got to get in that batting cage and make that contact with that ball, especially more so on the field, right? During game time, not at batting practice, right? You still got to be able to use this to this eye hand coordination. You still got to be able to whip that bat around, right? You still got to know how to place the ball. You still got to know where to hit it and what part of the bat. So all that stuff comes into play. That's why you have hitting coaches. That's why you have hitting coaches. And sometimes it'll be like Mark McGuire. He was hitting coach for San Diego Padres and then the Dodgers. He didn't really hit for a good average, but his bat power wise was you know almost second to none for a while there. You know, uh, Obviously Sammy Sosa. There's been some dangerous hitters over the years, especially during that era, right? Um, what I, so what I'm saying is, uh, a lot of different things, technique, preparation, obviously doing the actual work, right? You don't just take the stuff and you just get big. Canseco he had perfected his regiment. He had a certain regiment that he did, including working out, uh, uh, the mixtures of what supplement or not supplements, what substances he was taking, and how much. And so he had that going on with the diet, with the actual workout routine, right? And with the skills that he already had, he tried to better the skills, right? And so you can't just say, oh, well, he juiced and therefore that's what made him a good player. You have to have talent before you even get into a league. You have to be talented, right? It just doesn't make sense that, well, like again, we'll go back to Bonds. I didn't even finish saying what I was saying about Bonds, where Canseco started off his career faster than Bonds. Bonds obviously had a longer career, but then later Bonds, after they say he started using the stuff, which was 93, I think. So basically his Pittsburgh Pirate days, he was still a good he was a superstar already, and just if you look at those numbers alone, he's on track to be a Hall of Famer. He hasn't played now in how many years? Let me see. I think Bonds hasn't played now since, well, they won the World Series in 2010. He wasn't on the team. He was gone already. So what? Oh 06, oh 07 maybe. Um, so it's a difference. But Canseco, the difference between Canseco and most power hitters of that era, that boy was the only ones I could think of that was it was with them on that stuff was Bo Jackson. Uh, he's really the only one I could think of that was. Oh well, no, I take that back. Eric Davis, Darryl Strawberry, they could steal some bases too, but not they weren't as big men. Strawberry tall wise, yes, 6'6", but Eric Davis is more thinner guy. He had power. You know what I'm saying? Those were, by the way, those were my three favorite players as growing up: Eric Davis, Darryl Strawberry, and Jose Canseco. You know what I mean? But Canseco was fast. He was big, yoked up, and he was fast. He could run the bases, right? And he trained himself in practice and all that to become a good base runner. You know what I'm saying? Because you have to time things, right? You have to time when to jump. You got to time. You got to. It's technique to all that stuff. How much how much lead do you want to give yourself off the bag? You know what I'm saying? Certain pitchers, you got to start learning technique from certain pitchers and know that you can take an extra step and a half with this guy, but you can't with that guy, right? And then you got to learn. You start learning their deliveries and all that, and it's not really you stealing bases against the catcher. It's more you stealing bases against the pitcher, right? Even though the catcher does have something to do with it, and if he's like Bonito Santiago or more so Ivan Rodriguez, which is Pudge, you know those dudes you got to be aware of too, because those guys can throw you out from their knees. You know what I'm saying? Um, But if the pitcher is not helping them because he's one of those slow delivering pitchers, or of course if he's a right hander, he can't see he can't see, but that way it's better as good as a left hander. You know what I'm saying? So all this stuff comes into play when you got a left handed pitcher going against a right handed batter. And, it's a lot of stuff to learn about what's what. You know what I'm saying? And Canseco seems to be when I'm listening to him too. By the way, they have a podcast called Off My Chest, and he's right now. I believe he's part of the team. Um, so go check that out. All you gotta do is punch in on YouTube, punch in off my chest, Canseco or Jose Canseco off my chest. That's how I found it. Originally, I found it on Instagram. Um, he's he goes over a lot of that stuff. He talks about everything's getting off his chest. He's being totally 100% honest about everything he's talking about. According to him. I'm not saying yeah he is, but if you hear and listen to the way he talks, it doesn't sound like he's holding up on anything, right? He says straight up he regrets uh, writing the book. He regrets big time letting the cat out the bag about some of his teammates. But he's I don't really want to talk too much about him as a player right now because I got something else in the works. Um, Along with Mark McGuire, everybody knows was the Bash brothers, right? The two forearms, boom. But not only that, they had Dave Parker, Don Baylor, they had Terry Steinbach, they had Dave Henderson, and then the next 2 years later, 90, here comes Ricky comes back. So you had all these dudes that were, smacking their forearms together as the Bash brothers, but it started with Mark McGuire and Canseco, right? Because by that time, Dave Parker was, he wasn't the same Dave Parker from the Cincinnati Reds, let alone the Pittsburgh Pirates. Don Baylor's wasn't the same guy that was the league MVP with the Angels. You know what I'm saying? Um, so nonetheless, though, they could still get a ball up out of there when now and then. You know what I'm saying? Um, he was also part of. He went to 3 World Series back to back to back with the A's. '88 we lost to the Dodgers. '89 we beat the Giants in the Bay Series, and then in '90 we lost to the Reds and the Big Red Machine 2.0, I guess you call it, with Eric Davis, Barry Larkin, Chris Sabo, Norm Charlton, Rob Dibble, Randy Myers. Uh, who else was there? That's about the only ones I can think of right now. Anyways, um, Canseco with the Bash Brothers and the A's back in '86. That was his rookie season. Um, he said that they only had like anywhere between 4,000. I've heard different numbers. I heard him say between 4 and 5,000, and another time I heard him say 6, 7,000. Um, to bringing back the joy of baseball to Oakland, where they're selling out every game. You know what I'm saying? Um, because back in the '70s, the A's went to 3 World Series too, back to back to back, but they won all three. You know what I'm saying? I believe it's 70, 72, 73, 74. Um, you know what I mean? So it was he regretted it. But like I said, from the podcast, he keeps it 100. He says probably nobody in professional sports, or at least baseball, has stepped on as many landmines as he has. When he's talking about his bankruptcy, going to jail, uh, uh, relationships, you know, all kinds of different things he talks about. You know what I mean? Oh, basically, he said from living in a big house to living in a garage. You know what I'm saying? So he's hit rock bottom when it comes to that, and thank God for him that he hasn't turned to drugs and alcohol, right? But he does. He's still on steroids to this day, but they call it uh what's it, he calls it PD. I think it's called I forgot what he called it. Therapy, some therapy, PED therapy. Um, Basically, it's just he's doing the same thing what he did, except this time he has a prescription, so it's all good in Hollywood as far as getting in trouble. Um, and he says he'll probably be on it for the rest of his life. But he's 60 years old. He just turned 60 last month, July 2nd, and he looks pretty damn good for 60 years old. Still big, still, you know what I'm saying? But like I said, just because he's on that, he still has to put in the work. Uh, he said, I'm currently 6'3", 6'4", 270, he said. I'm pretty sure he's shrunk a little bit by now. It's probably because he was always listed as 6'3". Because I remember that was one of the things I would look at in the baseball cards, the height and the weight. And he was always listed as 6'3". Then I started noticing some cards would say 6'4" in the back. But Mark McGwire was 6'5". But he did break some. He did say something about. Actually, it wasn't in this podcast. It was another old video I seen. Uh, I think it was that one his video off the A&E last shot. I think it was called. I didn't know Mark McGwire had another brother. So we know about Dan McGwire, the quarterback for the San Diego's Aztecs, and then he went on to be drafted by the Seattle Seahawks, and he was 6'8". From according to Jose Canseco, Mark McGwire has another brother that was a bodybuilder, and Canseco says in that last shot that he believes McGwire started with his brother because he didn't start with him. Another thing Canseco said that he admitted too, that him and Roger Clemens were friends, and that back then, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, because Red Sox were usually the runner-up in the American League. He said because Roger Clemens they never had spoke about steroid use or any of that. Um, what I thought was kind of dumb was Loopy the blogger. He says, "Well, why would Andy Pettit say that then about him?" And Jose Canseco says, "Well, that would be a question for Andy Pettit." But what don't make sense about all that was that you're talking about 1986, 87, 88, 89, 90, when Canseco, even you could probably say up to 92, when Canseco was around him a lot and hung out with him and whatever. But now when you talk about Pettit, you're talking about 12, 15 years after that. You know what I'm saying? You figure, he was on the Yankees and Clemens. You know what I mean? So I mean, times have changed. Plus he's older. He was throwing heat still at, and he was heavier. I'm not saying he was on it. I'm just saying, but I don't see. I mean, if you listen to some gangsters like Joey Merlino, they say, the rats will say anything, and all the, everybody that's on the stand is telling. I mean, excuse me, not telling, is lying, which I don't believe that at all. You know what I'm saying? Yes, some of them lie, of course, because they're trying to save themselves. So of course they're going to lie, but I don't believe, because Seiko said, well, because he's been called a snitch for writing that book, and he's like, well, I told the truth, right? All I did was tell the truth. So am I really a snitch or am I a truth teller? So I dropped the comment like I said, no, negative ghostwriter. You're not. You're. It's both. People can be a liar and be a cooperator or an informant, and then they could tell the truth too. But it's hard to believe that. I mean, and this happened because you have people come out saying it, but it's really hard to believe that you wouldn't think it would happen that a district attorney or a United States attorney would put somebody on the stand knowing that they're lying in order to get somebody. But we know that's happened before. You know what I mean? We've known that's happened before. So, um, and that's the funny thing too with the show is that you got a guy named Larry Smith. You got Canseco. Canseco been to jail a few times. He was in jail 4 or 5 months. One time, a couple months here, but he's not from the street, so I don't consider him a rat, right, or snitch, um, because like I said at the time, that wasn't illegal. Steroids wasn't illegal. You know what I mean? But they obviously wouldn't admit it because that would be tainting their numbers, right? And that wouldn't be a good thing. That would be tainting their accomplishments. You know what I'm saying? So that wouldn't be a good thing. So how can you say he's snitching if what he's saying and opening up and revealing is not illegal? You know what I'm saying? How can it be snitching? You know what I'm saying? So it's just a trip. It's just those people that run their mouths that ain't about that life, but yet they gotta say something. You know what I'm saying? Um, back then baseball was making, especially when these guys start battling for, home runs and all that. Like for example, Kevin Mitchell, he finished that one year with 47 home runs, right? I think it was 89. He finished with 47 home runs, and I want to say All Star break, middle of the season, he already had about 30, right? 30, something like that, and right away, they start talking about, oh, the Roger Maris, the record, and he only ended up finishing with 47, right? So I think he hit about 30 in the first half, and he only ended up finishing with like 17 in the second half. 47 is still a lot of home runs, though. Don't get me wrong, but 14 shy of tying Roger Maris at that time, 61. So, all these years, that was always the question. Roger Maris, right? And then McGuire ended up doing it in 98, right? Sammy Sosa's chasing him too, and they both hit more than the record was that year, right? McGuire finished with 70 and Sosa finished with 66. I think Sosa, I'm pretty sure he's the only guy. Sosa hit 60 home runs 3 seasons, I think, or might be 4 seasons. Um, it's astronomical, those numbers, right? But now that we see, the testing, we don't see that too much now. Those real high numbers. Yeah, of course, Aaron Judge passed that old record a couple years back. He's got the record for the American League, right? He hit 62, right? Um, that's the American League record because Bonds, McGuire, and Sosa were all in the National League, and then Bonds ended up breaking McGuire's record just 3 years later with 73 and 20 in 2001. Um, it's what was I thinking? It was like it's like you know, basically Conseco's saying that he thought that back then when he did the congressional thing that he like I was back on that now. He told what he did, what he was involved with, what some guys were involved with, And he thought though when those guys came that there was going to be, hold some honor for themselves, some integrity, be hold themselves accountable in front of a, considered a sacred, a sacred place of the nation, right? The capital, right? And he thought that, a different, owners and GMs and uh, franchises, the clubs, were gonna, work together to clean it up, right? But instead, only working together they did was to make sure that Canseco was blackballed from being picked up ever playing again. Even he said he went to the Players Association, which is a pretty strong union, and they wouldn't even. They said we can't do nothing, which is a lie, right? Um, and I understand why some of them were mad because that was supposed to be a secret what they were doing, and like I said, now when you talk about should McGuire, McGuire, Bonds, uh, Clemens, even Gary Sheffield, should they be in there? And if they are, first the question is, should they be in the Hall of Fame? Then the next question is, should there be an asterisk next to their name or not? Because even though they didn't get busted, they played in that era. Which that's kind of stupid, right? To just because you think something, but you have no proof to show that that's what happened. You're willing to hold these guys out, and then on top of that, if they do get in, they got to put a star next to their name, asterisk next to their name, basically saying, have the asterisk, and then you look, what's the asterisk mean? Okay, possibly use steroid use. You got Manny Ramirez, Sammy Sosa. Sammy got over 600 home runs. Manny Ramirez has over five something, right? They're not in there, but Jim Thome's in there with 609 home runs. He's in the Hall of Fame. Frank Thomas is in there with 521. Um, you know what I mean? Sheffield's not in there. He has over 500. Um, so it's, a, it's just a question of who you are. You know what I'm saying? Sports writers, they shouldn't have that job on any of the sports because I don't care what sport we go to, basketball, football, or baseball. There's guys that should be in there that ain't in there, and there's other guys that are in there that shouldn't be in there yet, or not over these guys. You know what I'm saying? So, and it's the same thing, same criteria as far as sports writers vote them in. Then they got the what do you call it? The Veterans Committee, and what I'm saying. That's how they just got in for the Bears for the Veterans Committee. You know what I'm saying? But uh, all that stuff's not being done right. It's not being ran right. It's not being done right. Um, you're talking about guys that got a personal beef with with these athletes because they didn't treat them how they wanted them to be treated. Which I understand that somewhat, but to hold somebody, hold them hostage to getting voted in because of that reason, like Bonds is barely getting nowhere near what he should have got. You're talking a guy that hit over 762 home runs. You know, off the chart numbers. He was a close to a 300 lifetime hitter, or just might be over 300. I forgot right now off the top of my head, but it's not a big gap between his lifetime average and 300. Uh, and if he is over, it's not over by a lot. It might be 306, 308. You know what I'm saying? More walks than anybody. Just a dangerous guy to be at the plate against. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, it's just you know, some of that stuff just don't make sense to me. Um, you know, Manny Ramirez. I think he got busted twice. Alex Rodriguez got busted a couple times. Alex Rodriguez, he's got what? Did he ever hit 700? Or he's 8 shy, right? 9 shy. I think he has 690, 690 something, I believe. 691 or something like that. Anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and shut this one down, but I will be doing another video sometime later in the future. I want to talk about duels, top duels in baseball, 1-2 punches. So Canseco McGuire, Henry Aaron, and Eddie Matthews, Willie Mays, Willie McCovey. Who am I missing? I know there's a few more. Ernie Banks, Billy Williams, maybe. Um, Let's see. How about Frank Robinson and George Foster? Um, there's a few guys. You can go by Barry Bonds and Bobby Bonilla, Barry Bonds and Jeff Kent. Um, there's a lot of guys. There's not a lot of guys, but there's a few guys out there. Um, but that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and shut this down. Till the next time.